The story that I wrote about was not just my issues with the police and my run-ins with the police growing up, but my community's relationship with the police, the traditional relationship that has spanned back forever. As everyone knows, it was way before me. It was back in Stonewall. It was, but one of the things that I try very hard in the advocacy and activism that I do is to recognize where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. We always have to acknowledge the progress that we make. That's always very, very important for me. I just got back from New Orleans, and every time you see a police officer, you think, oh God, is he gonna pull me over? Then if he pulls me over, if he finds out I'm trans, how is he gonna treat me? Am I gonna get locked up? Am I gonna get beat up? Trans folks are at a 50% suicide rate. That's 50% of trans people attempt suicide before they reach adulthood or even into adulthood. Trans women of color are 8 times more likely to be murdered or physically attacked in some way just for simply being who they are walking down the street. With that, you then add the factor the people that we believe are here to protect us are way more likely to actually be the attackers. My sister Naja Morris was murdered. I watched countless times that my other sisters were falsely stopped just for walking down the street, etc. I myself was attacked for years, whether it was during the day. I was in a relationship and had 2 stepchildren, and I would be walking down the street with them going shopping, and these police officers who knew me from the neighborhood, so they knew I was trans, would see me in the middle of the day with the children and be calling me names and calling me the wrong pronouns, etc. I was locked up repeatedly for doing absolutely nothing but being in the neighborhood, going to the different bars, having drinks. One particular time led to what I call my final moment. It was my wake-up call. I apologize, I still get very emotional about it, but it was the moment that I decided I was not taking this anymore, and that from this day forward, I was gonna stand up, and I did. There were so many of us that dealt with it over and over and over again. We would be literally walking out of a bar and looking around the corner and like, okay, there's no police, we can run to the next bar now. We weren't doing anything other than what everybody else in the LGBT community in the neighborhood was doing. Going to a bar, going to a club, having a good time, buying drinks. We weren't hurting anyone, we weren't doing anything wrong, we were just living. So when that pivotal moment for me, when that officer and I finally got into an actual confrontation, and it happened at 13th and Locust, after it was broken up and other officers showed up and put me in handcuffs, they put me in the car with the officer that I just got into the confrontation with. So the whole ride to the police station, you know, he's threatening me, telling me my family's gonna find my body and et cetera, et cetera. Even that, at that point, was not going to deter me. I shut up, I got to the station, I knew one of the sergeants that was there when he heard the commotion, because when they brought us in there, they were calling all the other officers out of the back and come look at the trannies, come look at the freaks, come look at them, come look at the shims and all the other names you could think of. And this is an entire precinct of officers. So I ended up being let go the next morning with a citation. And I went forward. Before I contacted a lawyer, I contacted the PGN, I contacted the News Journal, I contacted the news stations, contacted anyone I could think of, and then went to an attorney. They attempted to intimidate us and tell us that, are you sure you want to go through with this? Because by then the article had came out in the PGN. And they said, you know, if you go through with this, we could look into your backgrounds, we could look into your financial records for years back, where you live, blah, 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 blah. It just, that was it. I told them, if you called us here because you thought you were gonna scare us, let's call an end to this meeting because you're wasting your time. At the end of all that, when we settled, they immediately offered us a financial settlement. I said no. I needed more than a financial settlement. That's not what this was about. This was about you recognizing that your officers that are patrolling this neighborhood that is supposed to be our safe space, the entire LGBT community, not just the lesbians, gays, and bisexuals, but the transgender people, or the gender queer people, they deserve that safe space as well. And so often we are left out of that space. That includes with the police. The police were fine with the lesbians and the gays, but if they saw one of the trans folks, that was the one they singled out. No matter what we were doing, we were the ones they singled out. At the end, they agreed for better sensitivity training for any officer that was going to be patrolling the neighborhood. That didn't go so well for a few years. But fast forward, now I sit on the Philadelphia Police Liaison Committee with Nellie Fitzpatrick and Deputy Commissioner Kevin Bethel. And one of the officers that was one of my worst abusers growing up is on that committee. But he's proof that there's progress and that there's change, because we now work on this committee and we work together. Him and I show up in court at the same time when there's a trans person in court, because they've stood up to someone who's abused them. Deputy Commissioner Bethel will be on the phone with me, and sometimes when I hang up, I think, wow, I'm on the freaking phone with the Deputy Commissioner of Police. That's a big change from all them years ago when I was this scared little girl walking down the street, ducking behind cars because I was afraid the cop was going to catch me going from bar to bar. So, like I said in the beginning, I always like to acknowledge where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. Where we are now is a good place. We have Directive 152. That is part of now police policies and procedures and how they will deal with LGBT, especially the T folks. That is a mandate that they have to follow this procedure. I, along with Nellie Fitzpatrick, now also, we train all graduating Philadelphia police cadets go through 2-hour training with us. They have to do that training. It is absolutely mandatory. And again, that's one of them things where I go, wow, now I'm standing in front of a classroom full of Philadelphia police cadets who, it's a totally different time. We make jokes sometimes and say, the last class, in the beginning, we always ask, how many of you know someone gay, someone lesbian, someone bisexual? Someone raises their hand. A while back, when you would say, how many know someone transgender? Not too many of them raised their hand. Now, almost every class, they all raise their hand. And when we're giving them the instruction and telling them about Directive 152, they're just kind of like, well, why are you explaining this to us? It's pretty simple. We just treat everybody the same. So that just shows, again, the progress that's being made. Thank you.